now.
Okay, cool. All right. So tonight, what we're gonna do is Fedzski and I are gonna take a look at the co-op gameplay for Defense Grid 2, and we've got Shu here from Hidden Path Entertainment, one of the you said sound developers as well as testers for Defense Grid for Hidden Path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm the test lead at Hidden Path and also a sound designer.
Okay, so what we're gonna do is just take, like we do with every one of our first looks or dev interviews, we're gonna play through the game a little bit. We'll talk to Shu here, and if you guys have any questions in the chat, he is in the chat right now, and you said it's televid, is that correct?
Yeah, televided, that's me.
Televided, so feel free to ask questions in the chat, and he is watching right now, so he should be able to answer them for you, and we'll ask him some questions as well as things pop up. He's only going to be with us for about half an hour, we don't want to take a whole ton of his time, and then once he goes on his way, we will continue to be terrible at this game, and we'll play for a little bit longer after that. So let's set up a game with Fedzski first, before we go. Let's get the invite sent. Alright. We'll get Fedzski in here. So we did co-op doubles last time where everybody could kind of build wherever they wanted, and that worked pretty well for us. And actually, what I'll ask first off is, we played a couple test games before this, and I kind of get the basic descriptions, but when we were in DG Fighter mode, or no, I don't think we were. We were still in co-op doubles, but on one of the first
doubles,
maps, it seemed like at random, some of our towers were dying, and we couldn't figure out what was causing that, if it was one of our powers, or if like the enemies could actually attack those towers. I'm not sure what was causing it.
Well, some of the aliens carry like a disruptor and or an EMP disruptor type thing, and when they die, it drops on the ground and it shuts down your towers.
Oh.
That might have been what it was.
Wait, but they weren't shutting down. They were like, the towers are like gone eventually. Yeah, you have to rebuild over them. Is that what you mean by that?
It might have been just one of our captain powers too.
There's another.
I don't think there's friendly fire. Is there?
There's another mode called no, there's not friendly fire. There's another mode called limited resources where you have to, or not limited resources, sorry, power outage, where you have to mouse over a tower to keep it active. Otherwise, they all go out.
Ah, okay.
So when your cursor is close to a tower, you'll keep them alive, and then so you kind of have to guide the path through. It's more of an advanced player tactic.
That might have been why, because currently I've got our settings kind of just wide open to like doubles mode, any game type, whatever. So I switched our difficulty back to normal. If you just wanted to take like a good look through the game without that kind of thing happening, what doubles mode would you recommend?
I don't know. Let's. I mean, stories always straightforward. Although if you don't want the chatter, you could always do. I think practice is available in doubles mode.
Okay.
And that would give you basically the story mode without the AI chatter.
Okay. The cursor causes damage and hover. Oh, that's kind of cool. Focal point makes your cursor do damage. That's sweet. Power outage. Yeah, let's try focal point. That's kind of different. That lets us have a little bit of leeway. As far as game type goes, so like you guys, if you're watching the stream, you can obviously see there are a ridiculous number of options for customization on how the co-op works, and co-op, especially for this type of tower defense, is a little different because if you've played something like Sanctum, where you can kind of both play together, it's all first person, so that's a little different. And so far from the couple games Fedzski and I have played, the strategy of like actually communicating with another player and saying, well, what do you think about this square, or what would be the best tower for what rails we want to reach at this point, has added like a really interesting aspect to how the tower defense works. So let's just go open game type. We'll try the focal point, normal difficulty, any map is fine, and co-op doubles, and we'll kick off. So this only gives us two different...
I have an upgrade for my gun now. I can use Tachyon bullets? That's cool. That's new.
I cannot. I only have two options on command team, though, and I played Zakara last time. So I'm going to play her again, because I have like a...
No, I'm going to put that on, because it slows targets and does extra damage. Okay, well, that's cool.
Okay. So it seems like, in addition to just the basic tower defense, you guys put a lot of emphasis on how, not only how, like, you can customize the command team, like, in this mode there are only two different commanders, but in some of the other modes there are several commanders, and there's a kind of an upgrade path as far as which guns you play to. So what kind of added that RPG element to this type of game?
I'm sorry, was that a question?
Yeah, like what was the motivation behind that, I guess, is the question.
Yeah, well, going from... Sorry, I was like reading chat, doing a bunch of other stuff too. So I think the impetus was really coming from listening to player feedback from DG1. They wanted to see stuff like, I want to be able to do more modification. I want to feel like my build and loadout really matters. I want to feel like I make some, I can make a really cool strategy here, and that's not just locking me into standard gun and cannon tower type thing. So listening to player feedback really guided us down that road, and we found it was really compelling. So
yeah, and that it seems like it would add a fair bit of depth to the game, because for like as much as I liked the first game, once you had kind of figured out, okay, well this is maybe the best gun for the situation, and this is maybe the best way to negate this type of enemy, that was about as far as it went. So when you have that option to upgrade towers in specific ways between games, it adds a lot more strategy to it, and I think that's an interesting element to add tower defense.
Yeah.
So all right, what do you think, Fedzski? What do you want to do here?
Wait, do you see the arrows? I don't see the arrows.
Yeah, so there's like the orange arrows come out through here, and then they just go right along this path, and then right out through there. Do you not see them at all?
Oh wait, now I do.
Okay. Yeah, I zoomed in a little bit, so they were a little easier to see. I'm thinking, well, what do you think? Do you want to go like rip them out this way, and then like try and?
What would be the longest path? I think we could go like this. We make him go like this, and then up through here. Is that, you think it's possible? Probably.
Well, I think we need to go off to like their right off the bat, because there's no connector here.
I think we need to block. I'm gonna block this off. We can block. No,
So I was thinking. So let's maybe go off this way. All right. And then loop them down through here,
up here,
and then
up and around.
Yeah.
I think that works.
Yeah, because then we can like block this portion here and this portion here, and use this whole backside as towers. So let's start blocking off that way, and then that'll start the wave.
Okay. I should put it like right here.
So let's go like this way first. Let's block off this row to kick off.
True. Okay. Just put a gun down for now.
Let's drop a gun. Oh, cool. So that was the other thing that we kind of weren't totally clear on, I guess, from just the... Like, I've got a couple hours into the game now because I played some of the preview code, but it seems like certain guns are only available in certain modes. Is there a reasoning behind that?
Yeah, it's all based on the story. If you're playing through story, you'll have things unlocking, or not unlocking, but just kind of available to you based on what the storyline is demonstrating.
Okay.
So that, like the AI generals that you get, at one point you have Kai early on, and then later she's gone, and so you won't have her available. You have to pick one of the other generals.
Okay.
So that's an example of why the towers are limited. It's mainly in the story modes, or the modes that reflect what is going on in the story at the time.
So is my cursor doing damage? I don't know.
Yeah, so with the game mode we selected, when you float your cursor over the enemies in this one, it will actually cause damage to them. So like, if we get into
you gotta aim at them.
Okay.
And it's just a float, right? There's no click involved. You just kind of float over the enemies, and that makes it happen.
Exactly. It's
Okay,
just a hover.
I actually think it's pretty interesting that one of the modes that you guys that we looked at there in the menus really quickly is that the no red towers mode, where you can't upgrade them to their top capacity. Was that just to add like an extra level of challenge to people that were really into tower upgrades, or what was the thought behind that?
I think actually that one is suggested by our community, because there's it's exactly what you said. It's related to difficulty and challenge, but also it's you're really limited to having to spread out your kind of pathing and think a little bit more strategically about it. You can't just create up a little kill box and ignore the rest of the map.
Yeah, I can see that. So you have to try and make them go through as long of a path as possible with only the towers that you have available.
Right, it spreads it out and makes the same playthrough a little bit more interesting, because you can't always change the what type of aliens that are going to come out at a time. Once you're familiar with the mode, it's going to be the same thing. So
okay, and that makes sense, because in the couple practice modes that we just played, once you got certain towers, like I think specifically when in that last match you and I played, Fedzski, the cannon at red tier was really, really strong.
Mm-hmm.
And so was I'm a big fan of the Tesla tower. I think the way that it chains is pretty interesting. And at that top red tier, we had a couple of them just kind of where the first, like when the wave first comes out, we had a couple of red tier boosted Tesla towers, and they did a ton of damage right off the bat. So I could see how that would add a big level of challenge if you didn't have that option.
It's actually kind of like an interesting mechanic, having like your cursor do damage, because like it's like, oh, do you want your cursor to do damage, or do you want to build stuff? It's kind of, I don't know, it's weird. It's
well,
an
there's
interesting feature.
Yeah, there's also the sense of once you kind of have everything built, what do you do now? And so, as you know, in terms of balancing, we had to ask ourselves that question. We wanted to make it a little bit more difficult than just using towers. So it kind of gets to the point later on in the game that you should be using your cursor.
Yeah.
And it really starts to add up.
Okay. Well, actually, I think the coolest thing with it is that, especially because you guys have this interesting co-op mode where you can kind of both work on the same build, it's nice because you could be like, okay, well, I'm going to build some tower paths, and in the meantime, I need you to float around and like try and kill as many of these guys with your cursor as possible. So it gives each person like a really unique role that they have to play in these co-op game modes, which is a big change.
Yeah, it's important for co-op for players, in my opinion, in all games, for each player to feel like they have something to do. So, yeah, there's reasons there.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. So what I'm going to do, Feds, is I'm going to try and, in this top kind of square here, close off this top path, and then this as well, so we can hit them as hard as possible while they walk through this square and give them a longer path. And then they'll go through this, and then we could actually block these two squares here, so then they have to go out and around this entire platform.
So I put 3 meteors here because I think it gives them max range, like all around here.
Okay, yeah,
like they
that's
literally
cool.
cover everything from this. I don't know if that's good or bad, but it seems pretty decent to me.
Yeah, it covers a good range.
My opinion is that the meter tower, centrally located, is a really good use or a really good spot for that tower.
Yeah.
I don't know how much, like pro tips or advice you want me to give you guys, so I can.
It doesn't really matter.
Oh no, that's fine. Especially, it's nice to be able to talk to some of the people that do the game. It's like, hey, maybe that's not the best place for one of these towers because it would not do the correct amount of damage that you want there. I'm gonna put this guy. I'm gonna throw. Let's see, what would be good for this range? I'm going to throw a couple cannons over here. That way it covers this entire square and the cores as well. So you did a lot of the sound design, it sounds like. How was that process? Because you've got a pretty wide variety of cannons, so each one obviously is going to cover some different sounds. Was there like a very specific recording process for each of those sounds? Or was it just something that's like, okay, we've got some options from the original defense grid. How can we expand on that?
Yeah, there's two different kinds of sound design. So the kind of sound design I did is I took assets from another sound designer and I hooked them up in game. So the assets, creating the assets the assets I did were things like the gun tower, were created with what they call a white noise generator. I started to synthesize the sound of a bullet strike and then added a bit of a reverb tail on it, and then copied it out a whole bunch of times so it kind of sounds cohesive in a loop, and then made it sound a little sci-fi and added some elements here and there to it. So the creative process for creating like a gun sound or something is pretty straightforward. A lot of stuff there that's kind of industry standard knowledge if you've done that kind of thing before. But most of the sound design work was done by the guy who did our score as well. His name is Dwayne Decker, and he's really talented. We've worked with him on DG1. The guy's just fantastic. I can't say enough good things about him. So I don't really know what he did for a lot of those. Sometimes sound designers use a library of sounds where they have gone out and done Foley work themselves, and then they kind of mangle and mutilate them for every game that they work on, so nothing sounds too distinctive. Although in the world of sound design, there's always your Wilhelm scream.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yep.
It gets reused a lot. A little bit of a nod to other sound designers.
Mm-hmm.
So that stuff does come around. I mean, most notably, I think the bear sound. Like, there's a bear sound. If you've played World of Warcraft, right? So, I'm sure you guys have played a druid.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the bear sounds from that game have been reused in other games. I don't know which one came first, to be honest. I mean, WoW has been out for so long, but I hear that bear sound in commercials. I hear it in movies, and it's almost it's pretty comical, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting because I played a lot of older games when I was like a kid, and one of them there are like two sounds that I hear on a pretty regular basis, and one of them is the selection confirmation sound from the original XCOM. It's just like this like bwom sound that they used in that game. It was the first I ever heard it, and I hear it pretty much in every sci-fi or movie or game I've ever watched. It's like, oh, they use the computer, and you hear that bwom, and it's like that came from XCOM. So
Yeah. Well, if it didn't come from XCOM, it was so inspired by that game. I mean, it's one of those classics. There's two kinds of sci-fi. There's sci-fi participants, where people are taking a trope that's been done, and then there's sci-fi contributors, where they're doing something nobody else has done before. And that was kind of the original XCOM, at least in my eyes. And so I imagine a lot of people have taken influences from that and are inspired by it.
Sure. So I'm obviously not a sound design professional, but I have watched some stuff about how that whole process works, about how people get the original basis for their sounds. So was there any part of this game where it was like, okay, I need to go out into the field today with like a recording mic and just capture some original sound and then bring it back to our systems and modify it until it works in like this sci-fi environment? Was that something you had to do during this process, or was it all kind of just taking stuff that already existed and modifying it?
No, in my case, it was all done. Either I synthesized the sound using generators, white noise generators, or I got the asset from someone else, and I really can't say what he did to generate those sounds. He probably does. I'm sure he has a library that he's built on his own of going out and doing field recordings and that kind of thing. So,
okay.
I mean, his stuff is very, very unique and very solid in terms of quality. Just side note here: when you guys were starting off this match, you were kind of talking about what the pathing you would do and what your strategy was going to be. That right there vindicates like so many meetings we had. We were really hoping for that experience, that players would go, oh yeah, let's try this, and they'd talk about it. And my theory is that many little brothers will be punched for this game.
Why did you put that tower there? I didn't tell you to drop a tower there.
Exactly. You spent all the money.
And that actually. So we played two, the kind of preview type games, because we had both kind of played some stuff on our own, but we hadn't really played together until this evening. So before about 8:30 tonight, we just let's play a couple preview games. And the first game we got absolutely decimated because
it was terrible.
It was brutal. We just got crapped all over because we were still kind of figuring out that coordination phase of it, where it's like, okay, well, what do you think about the pathing? What do you think about dropping things in this square? And then that second round where we had a little bit smaller map to kind of practice on and see how all the towers worked, that was, for me, that was the most fun because you get to work on like an overarching strategy for everything. And I think you guys nailed that aspect of it, where it's just open map. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? And obviously, that from what you said, that sounds like something you were really aiming for, and I think you hit that goal really well.
Thanks. I'll pass that along. You know, I think a part of it also is if you got to make sure not to put any towers down before you're done with your planning, because the minute you put a tower down, the aliens come. So.
Oh right.
And also, if you're not watching your difficulty as you're learning, the elite difficulties pretty much require, that you have tower items and they're going to require some massive amounts of experience to get through. A lot of us still don't have high scores in those categories. And
so were there levels at certain difficulties that even the dev team kind of couldn't deal with? They're like, oh man, maybe this is too hard, or maybe if we coordinate it really well, it'll work out.
I'm gonna plead the fifth on that one. I'd say the difficulty at certain points is pretty darn unfair. But it is not unbeatable. It's just really hard.
Okay.
So it's the we learned a lot from working on games like CS:GO. We learned about skill cap and skill ceiling.
Okay.
And you want your game to be playable and approachable, but at the same time, you want to have something that hardcore people can just go, I'm not going to go to bed until I get this.
I'm sure we have several CS:GO players in the KBMOD community that have gone through that process.
Yeah.
So I guess go ahead. Nope, sorry.
Well, it's just part of that. The longer you play it, the more you're going to understand the nuances that are in there. And on the surface, the game is simple, and you can certainly use very little strategy on easier modes and on easier difficulty, and enjoy yourself. But there's something there for people who really want to sink their teeth into it and crunch numbers. One thing, our community is amazing. Especially one thing I learned on G1. I've worked on a lot of games that are adversarial in nature, and tower defense and puzzle type games it attracts a certain kind of player that is more of a problem solver and tends to be a little bit more of a little bit less of a bruiser on the forums.
Okay.
So I'd say that a lot of times people say, how do you do this? And rather than getting L2P noob, they get some suggestions. And so they've worked with our community to work with us on that as well. We've really tried hard to listen and move off of that.
Yeah, that has to be a pretty big shift because there is, with CS:GO especially right now, that's a pretty huge game in the esports realm. And especially we've got a very active play base in our community as well. So how do you work through that? Like, that's just a totally different direction from something like CS:GO. Do you just know going in, okay, well, we're going to appeal to a different audience and we've got to kind of tune the game a different way? Or is it just like, well, we'll see what works and what happens?
Yeah, well, I think working with Valve, we had a lot of talent and expertise on their end. They had a lot of people have been doing, working that project since it was a mod. So we learned a lot from their expertise and leveraged that a lot.
Okay.
And also, there was a community of pro players that have been invited into play really early on, and we listened to a lot of their feedback as well. And this really Valve's baby at this point. I mean, the game is completely different. I fired it up the other day, and nothing looked familiar. I felt like I was at a stranger's house. So, I know that they keep developing it and growing it, and that's awesome. They're really taking that and going with it.
Yeah, I mean, there's that. We have several members that play, and we have especially some community members that are big into the key case combo culture. I'm thinking of Hardballer, who is just constantly on Twitter going, "Okay, I'm opening cases. Okay, I'm opening cases. Oh, I got a knife today. This is amazing." So when are keys and cases coming to Defense Grid 2 is the important part. Like, when is my rare tower drop going to be a thing I have to go through?
I don't think we were going to do hats or anything like that, or cases.
I think hats would actually be better for this game. Here is my rare hatted tower that's wearing its little fedora, and off it goes to kill aliens.
That was my suggestion. We wanted to do some kind of like Christmas thing for email, and I wanted to have a video of a gun tower with a Santa hat shooting at snowballs, but they ended up going with something else that was much cuter. But I still think a gun tower with a Santa hat would be adorable. That
would be great. So speaking of extra content, you guys have a couple options right in the main menu as far as how extra content is going to work, and you have full Steam Workshop support, which is awesome because it lets the community design maps and let the game go on further and go on for a much longer time. And especially here, we specifically say, like, if you open your game up to mod tools, it's going to live on much longer than it would otherwise because the community will just pick it up and go if it's a good game. Is there anything outside of that? Like, there's a DLC option as well. Do you guys have DLC that's already announced that you can talk about, or things that are in the works that you want to discuss, or is it something that's still in the planning phases?
I'm sure it's not off the table, but I can't speak to something specifically.
Okay.
I do know that, I mean, we've supported DG1 quite a bit. So there's, I would say that kind of level of involvement is going to continue on. But we are really going to be working hard to support the community tools and the DG Architect Editor and getting community maps in there. It's really important to us that we get that stuff on the surface and get people playing each other's maps.
Okay. Yeah, that was actually, after I'd played a couple rounds, the first thing I did was hop over to the workshop and see, like, what's going on with the workshop for it, because there's obviously content there that I can't get anywhere else. And I already saw that there were some design contests going on for this game for, like, Alienware, where it was like, hey, design a Defense Grid 2 map, and there looked like there were some pretty decent submissions. So is that something you guys are pursuing with other people?
Yeah, I mean, pursuing with other people, like endorsement type stuff, or?
Well, not even endorsement type things where it's like, hey, let's do a contest with you guys, or is Alienware kind of where you're starting and you're thinking about going other directions with that, or is it just like, this is a one-time thing we're thinking would be fun to kick the game off and launch it?
Well, it's a little column A, little column B, little country, little rock and roll. It's endorsements big what they are. Alienware has been a huge help along the way, and anywhere from working with us on packs and that kind of thing, and providing hardware. So it was really cool to do something for them. And in addition to that, I can't say that I know of any other endorsements that are on the way, but I can say that I wouldn't rule them out. It's always, and our community manager is always doing fun stuff with Windborne and that kind of thing, and challenging our community to doing different things, building certain ways.
Okay.
And Defense Grid is going to have that stuff in there as well. So I'm sure there'll be more community challenges, like map themes, that kind of thing, and people will vote up their favorites and that kind of thing. I'm sure that will happen.
Yeah, it's especially when you, I don't know, I've played a lot of games that seem like they would be a perfect fit for Steam Workshop that maybe don't include that support. They're like, well, we'll give you mod tools, but we didn't really want to pursue Steam Workshop for whatever reason it is. And this seems like it would be it's a very good fit for Steam Workshop with the ability to design maps. Now, is it something that might be expanded later to be like, well, here so and so can design a new tower or a new enemy type or something along those lines, or is it going to be kind of just at the map level?
As cool as I would think that would be, I think it's going to be at the map level to start with. Although I would not rule that out.
Okay.
We've done some pretty wild stuff in the past, so we're definitely involved. We don't ignore what people are saying. By the way, I know there's some stream lag here. I just saw you guys definitely handled that group of regenerating aliens. That was good job of that. You got to keep those cursors on because those guys will heal. And
I will say, I've been selfish. I spent a good 6,000 resources on my own meteors.
So far, that's working out for us, so that's okay. I actually had it until you said something right now. I was like, well, it doesn't seem like we have a ton of resources, but with this cursor power, we're kind of okay. But to be fair, I've also dropped like 5 Tesla towers over here. So
I'm just sitting here like waiting till the resources gets to 1,000. Like, oh, I hope Hex doesn't use any of that so I can upgrade my meteor.
Okay, so I know you said you had about half an hour. We don't want to keep you too super long because you guys are you have things to do. We don't want to hold you up. Is there anything in the chat that you guys wanted to ask that we didn't have a chance to, or is there anything Shu that you specifically wanted to talk about or kind of promo with the game that we didn't get a chance to touch on?
I can't think of anything that I want to promo. It's kind of just interested in seeing what you guys are going to do and see how it works out, see how you play it.
Well, you're welcome to stay around as long as you like. I just don't want to jeopardize your time.
I appreciate that. I mean, I can certainly take any questions if there are any questions in the chat here.
I do have a question. This game seems like it'd be pretty good on like tablets, like mobile. Is this something that like you guys are looking into? Potentially.
Well, we're busily working on the Mac and Linux versions right now, as promised by Kickstarter and that kind of thing. So we are, and we're on console as well. So I think there's some tablet potential there. I don't know how much of that I can talk about at this exact time. But,
I just see this being like really fun to like just on the bus, on the train, just like let's play some tower defense. I see this being like a good market for it.
Yeah, tower defense does kind of appeal to a more casual audience typically.
Yeah.
So that's your mobile gamers for sure. I don't think we're going to ignore that.
Well, that's perfect because Fedzski is a filthy casual, and this will be a perfect game for him to play then.
But there's hardcore stuff. Well, how about this? It would totally twist your brain then if you played it on a tablet in Elite.
Yeah, see, that is actually what I was about to ask is,
that's true.
While you said that there's, sometimes these games appeal to a more casual audience, with the depth of customization you can do, not only from the tower side of things, but from how, like, your commanders work, I don't know, there's a lot of, for a tower defense game, there's a lot of clicking and upgrading, and I feel like maybe it would get a little complex on that platform, on like an iPad or an Android tablet. So it could work really well, and it could be challenging and demanding, but I could see where it might be a balancing act for you guys to make it work well on that device.
I think perf would be the biggest challenge, and just making sure that we get it adequately tested. So that's I think, yeah, I agree with what you're saying. And as far as towers and stuff, I mean, those tablets these days are immensely powerful, especially if you're talking about Surface and that kind of thing. They're basically a desktop. But, but the other side of it is that you have to keep things you have to take a little bit of the pretty out. You have to run in a certain resolution, run for certain tablet specifications, and treat it more or less like a console.
Yeah, and that makes sense.
Yeah, we'll get something. I'm sure it'll be if something's released. I'm sure it'll be solid.
Yeah, I feel like if it's to the point now that the one that really surprised me lately was BioShock available on like an iPad.
Oh, and, wow, I didn't know that.
Well, so with Bioshock, very specifically, Bioshock is one of my all-time favorite games. It came out the year that I got married, and at that point, we were living in this little shoebox apartment. And my wife is not a big gamer, but she likes interactive experiences or like really good storytelling. So we lived in this tiny little apartment, and my desk happened to be in our living room. And I just remember it's one of the only times my wife has ever sat and watched me play a video game and go, "No, you need to keep playing because I want to see what happens next in the story." So if something that elaborate can happen, I feel like if it was something you guys wanted to pursue and you could scale it down properly and simplify it to the point that it would work, you're right. Those type of devices are now getting to the point that they're powerful enough to do those type of experiences, even if they're scaled down slightly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't think we'd have to scale down the gameplay that much. It's computationally, it's pretty solid under the hood. The code is very, very sound, but it's a matter of just there's so much drawn on screen right now that I think we might have gone a little ape on the art. I'm okay with that, but it's like, man, we gotta lower some polys.
Not just the poly count, and I feel like I'm looking specifically at the Tesla towers right now. Those lightning effects with how those have to be shaded and drawn. I feel like maybe that's to the point that even with something like Taker K1, you would maybe start to choke on a tablet.
Yeah, our VFX work is done by an amazing artist named Kevin Loza. He's awesome, and there's a lot of all the artists on the team are excellent. But, I'm super impressed with the work that he did.
I think we managed to survive that way without losing a single core, Feds.
Yeah.
Good job, guys. Good job.
Just something random I just noticed, like, Hex, and you notice, like, if you move your cursor around quickly, there's, like, a little, like, it drags, like, the little bit behind it.
Yeah, I think that's so if you looked at this game compared to our last one, there's that blue spirally effect on the cursors.
Yeah.
And that must be what does the damage to the enemies. That's what's showing, like, hey, you're going to do damage when you do that, and there's, like, a drag behind it, like an effect that, like, trails off of the back of it.
That's the particle that tells you you're doing damage.
Okay. So
for some reason, I was going around. I was taking that particle and just going around the water and just making my own little like bubbles in the water. I don't know why. I just found that amusing.
Yeah. Okay. You might want to up the difficulty this time. He's boiling water for tea. He's going fishing. He's off the side fishing.
Yeah. You deal with this. I'm gonna go over here and just draw circles in the water for a little while.
I put my 10K in the meters and I just went fishing.
Yeah. You phoned it in.
So we managed to crush that one. Shu, thank you so much for your time and talking to us about the game. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on or that we didn't get a chance to talk about before we let you go?
I think we're pretty good there. Play Defense Grid. It's available on Steam and on Xbox One and PS4. I think that's it.
Okay.
And, you guys keep me on Skype. You can hit me up anytime.
Yeah, definitely. We'll shoot you a message. Especially, I'm gonna start just messaging you and saying I need keys. I'm gonna need you to send me some keys right now.
That might work. Okay.
All right, Chi. Thanks a lot for your time. We really appreciate you coming out, and we'll catch you next time.
Cheers, guys. Have fun.